be here today with my Bluebeam crew. So you may have noticed we have Colin on the line. He's my manager. He'll be helping out with questions. So during the presentation today, if there are any questions, feel free to hold on to them until the end, or if you want, feel free to drop them in the chat, and Colin will be helping grab those questions and whatnot. I also have with me Molly. Molly Weber, and she is a technical account manager who's going to be participating in some of the live portions of the demonstration today. So as we get this show on the road, we're going to start off by kind of talking a little bit about Bluebeam and what Studio is and how you can use Studio right out of Bluebeam Review. So we'll kind of do an overview of that. We'll go through how to get logged in, creating accounts, working with Studio projects and sessions. And as I mentioned, we'll get to that and kind of like an overview of what those items are. And then we'll have some time in the end for Q&A. All right. So with that, let me go ahead and jump into this. So right now I'm sharing my screen, and this is currently Bluebeam Review. This is our PDF desktop editing software. It's built for and by the industry, meaning it is equipped to handle and work with PDFs that are larger scale, going to be, job site style PDFs, your architectural D sets, any type of large scale PDF for the construction industry. We're built with a lot of tools for making measurements, for making markups, digital collaboration, and data export. Now, I mentioned today we're going to be focusing on Studio, so I want to go ahead and just focus in on that part right here. So in my interface, I'm going to jump to the Studio panel. And as I do, this is kind of, if you're familiar with Bluebeam Review, you would jump to Studio by clicking this little blue icon, and then you would start by just signing in. Now, typically, you'll see that the sign-in option is grayed out, and that's because typically we'll need to always choose which server we're going to be joining first. So being in the US, I'm going to make sure I have the US server set up. If I wanted to be localized in any other type of region or country, I could choose the server to host my data there as well. So from here, I'm going to sign into Studio, and I can go ahead and sign in, or if I needed to, this part is completely free. So I'll be able to create an account. And to do that, all I need to input is my first name, my last name, my display name. If there's an email address that I want to use, a password, and the password does have to meet some certain minimum requirements. So at least, 8 to 32 characters. You'll need a lowercase letter, an uppercase letter, a number, and a special number. But once you get all this set up and you've created your account, what's going to happen from there is you'll get a email that will come through, and you'll have to just kind of click on that validation email to make sure that your account is good to go. So once you have your account ready and you sign in, we can start to take a look at some of the features in Studio. So what Studio is it's a cloud-based collaborative solution built right into Review, and it allows you to host, share, and collaborate with your project partners. Studio is comprised of two main components, and those two main components are called Studio Projects and Studio Sessions. So I'll start with kind of an explanation of projects. Projects are going to be kind of like a lightweight document management system meant for hosting files in the cloud and inviting your teams to check those files in or check them out as you start to make comments or changes on the project files that you upload. A Studio session is going to allow you to invite up to 500 people to do some real-time collaboration on the same exact set of PDFs. As we take a little bit closer of a look, so I've logged into Studio here, and I'm in my project section, and I know this if I kind of hover my mouse over this projects icon. If I needed to jump to sessions at any point, I can go ahead and click on this little whiteboard icon to jump and see what sessions I have. A couple things to point out here. I'm automatically able to see any of the projects that I've currently opened up, that I've created, or that I've been a part of. If I ever needed to, let's say somebody invited me to join their Studio project, I could always filter and jump to just any projects that I'm attending or just projects that I've created. I think it's pretty nice that we also have some sorting options to see, what the name of the project is, the ID of the project, and we'll kind of talk about what that is. But I can also keep my date created option on. So if I'm trying to only manage or access the most recent projects, I can kind of sort it by date created and always just see the most recent ones towards the top. Similarly, now, if I click on one of these projects here, I'll just jump into Studio Project 101, for example. What we're going to be able to do is that Review is going to open up another tab here for us. It'll automatically put us into kind of a split screen mode. So if I wanted to kind of condense this, I can click and drag my PDF to this other view. So now I'm only looking at one item at a time. And in my project, I'm able to store and access any type of file. One of the things folks don't know about a studio project is we can actually host any file type here. So if I were to upload a Word document and I wanted to check that file out, I'd be able to open it up, make changes in my Word application, and then check it back in directly in Studio. So let me go ahead and click on one of these folders to kind of drill down, and we'll take a look. So right out the gate, I'm able to dive into my folder and see what different files are currently loaded up in here. And we see a quick little preview of each of these files. So if I need to just get an idea of which one I'm jumping into, I'm going to be able to see that. One of the things you may have noticed is that we also see that some of these just show up as PDF icons. And what Studio is doing is it's actually caching only the files that we've opened up. So it saves some storage. Maybe if I don't ever need to go to the plumbing section or I don't need to go to my mechanical section, if I don't open these up, it's not going to cache these images. But if I do open this up, I'll just double click on it and I can go ahead and click to keep this not split. It opens this up. And now if I go back to my Studio Project tab, it's going to go ahead and show me that preview of this. So if you ever see any PDFs and they're not giving you a thumbnail, it's because you haven't opened those PDFs yet. So if we're taking a look at our files here, I did just jump into one of them. So let me go ahead and click into that file here. And what we notice when we open up a file in a Studio project is that normally there's a lot of tools available in our interface to start making changes or maybe making comments. But as soon as I've opened this file up, all those commenting tools and every tool in this interface is kind of grayed out for me. Now, there's kind of a main reason for that. In a Studio project, we're checking files in and checking them out. So if I don't have my file checked out and I see this lock icon, all my tools are going to be grayed out and I won't be able to make comments or changes quite yet. So if I've created my Studio project, uploaded my files, my folders, invited my team, and somebody starts to go and open up one of these files, to start making changes, they would need to check the file out. So we'll click on our lock icon and I could choose to do that here. So once I check the file out, I can go ahead and start to make changes. We see that our icons on the right-hand side have completely lit up here. And now I can go and make any comments or changes as needed. So maybe I'll grab my Cloud Plus tool, drop a quick comment here and say view spec. Oh, we'll just redo that real quick. Drop my comment here, place where I want my comment to be, and then say view specification update. So now I've made a quick change to this. If I need to change or manipulate any parts of my markup, we have our properties towards the top of this. So maybe I wanted to stand out a little bit more, add some line thickness to that comment so some folks can see it when they open it up, sure. And once I'm happy with the comments or the changes I've made, I'll need to check that file back in. Now, one thing to keep note of is once I have the file checked out, anybody else in the project won't see those updates that I'm making until I check the file back in or I update the server copy. So if I were to just press update server copy in my project, all the markups that I've just made in here will show, and anybody who clicks this will see that, but I'll still have the file checked out. Now, when I go to check the file back in, we're going to be asked to leave a revision comment. So in here, I can say engineer review complete. And let's imagine I had more markups for that engineer review, sure. But from here, once I check the file back in, I'm going to see a loading bar here, and then that familiar lock icon comes back. Similarly, if I wanted to check it out, I can do that, but we also get the option to kind of view and dig a little bit deeper into the file's revision history. So in this case, if multiple people have been accessing the file and I need to go back and double check any of the history on that file, I can see when the file was added. I can see if there was a check-in where there was a comment added into that. And I can even go and restore that comment or open that specific file in that point in time. So maybe a better example of this would be if I go and check out this file, we look at the revision history on this one, there might be some more things here. It looks like Amanda checked this one in and added her own comment there back in December of 2021. So we're able to maintain a good revision history in our studio project and also keep those files recoverable. So in the events of anything going wrong or something needs to be changed and maybe comments were added and we want those comments gone, we can always go back and restore those comments from the original. Oh, looks like there's some feedback there. All right, looks like that's set. So in a project, I mentioned we can also collaborate with other folks. So as I navigate through my project or I start to get it set up, I've added my folders, I've added my different drawings, I know how to check things in and check them out. We also have a way to invite other people. So if I wanted to invite someone else and they created that studio account like I kind of walked through earlier, they're going to be able to log in and check these files in, check them out as they join into the studio project. So as we go and start to invite people, if I wanted to, I can go ahead and type or paste in different emails. So let's say I wanted to add Molly to my email here, and I say, let's go bluebeam.com. And then I go ahead and do an enter, and I say, let's do Molly Weber at bluebeamdemo.com. Check and include my emails here. As I write out my invitation and start to invite multiple people, Studio is going to automatically break these up for me so I can see which is here and which ones, it splits up the different emails by their domain. So if at any point I made a typo and maybe it's not the same domain and I want to go ahead and remove that person, I could do that. I could also go in here and add a copy of that project invitation. So if I wanted to send my invite out to other folks without having to type that email, I could copy my project invitation and they'll have a link to click on. Before I send out my invitation to join the studio project, I can always add a message to that saying needs review completed by end of week. And then I can save my message, send that out. And now when I send this out, Molly would get an email in Outlook with my message and an invite to join in my studio project. So once I have folks joining into the studio project, it's really important to start to consider how you're going to interact with those files, how you want other people to interact with those files that you have accessible on here, and also kind of what controls those people have as you get into this. So I've invited a couple folks, and now I want to be able to change their permissions, maybe change their user access. And to do that, I've clicked on my settings option for the studio project here. Immediately, we see a little pop-up here, and it gives us some general information about the project. It gives us the project name, which we can actually change this. So I'm the host of this project. If I wanted to ever go in and modify my project name, I'll have the capability of doing that here. Some folks think that the project name is set up forever, but we can always change that. We also can see the 9-digit project ID. So if somebody wanted to join into the project and they didn't have an invite, but they knew this 9-digit number, they might be able to join in. I'll kind of explain why you may or may not want that capability and how you can prevent folks from getting in if they do get that 9-digit ID. So we also see some information like total users, total files, the amount of folders in here, what dates created. And we also have the ability to manage a couple things like notifications. So one of the things I'd like to mention here in notifications is in Studio, anytime files are changed, people check them in, check them out, we can turn on these notifications to give us kind of a daily digest of that session and that project activity. So if you have a preference and you don't want to see an email at the end of the day for these types of things, you can definitely turn that off in here and manage that for yourself. So if I go back to my settings here and we go to the next tab here for user access, I can quickly see who's joined the project and who hasn't joined. And I can also see if there's somebody who should be restricted, or I can send an email to remind that person if I need them to jump in. So maybe I need Molly to jump in. I can go ahead and send a reminder email for her to join in. Now, if I turned off this restrict users option, that's when someone can go ahead and use that 9-digit studio project ID and join into my project. So basically anybody who has the invite and this is turned off will be able to join into my project. But if I turn my restrict users on, anybody that I invite, I'm going to, just have a good feeling. I'll be ensured that anybody I've invited will be definitely the only ones allowed. So no outsiders jumping in. But if you ever do see someone who, pops into the studio project, you'll see them in this section and you can kind of, just choose to allow, deny them, or again, email to remind them and join. let's say I don't have, or there's someone that I don't want to have specific permissions, or maybe I want to give someone full control of my studio project, we can go ahead and dictate some of those permissions here. So just general attendees, if they're not assigned to a specific group, or I can make a group, as soon as they join into the project, they're going to have the ability to send invitations, manage user access, send PDFs to sessions, revoke checkout, and have full control. So these are things that I can actually change. So if I were to change full control on the attendees group, it's going to deny these all these different options here. Now, what's nice about Studio is we have the ability to build out groups. So in one example, if I had a specific group of subcontractors that I wanted to join in my Studio project, I can actually build a group, call it subcontractors, and tie emails to that group. So now I'm able to actually manage the permissions of that specific group. So if I wanted to give full control to my subcontractors, I could do that. But I could also limit things to like sending links to share those files and whatnot. If I wanted to add a new one, we would just simply add a new name for that group and then add the email addresses we want associated to it. Similarly with our permissions, as we go through, we can also give folder permissions, and this is kind of more specific to a Studio project. But if I added in my group of, let's say, my demo group, for example, and I add them in here, I can actually change what permissions they have on the project itself. So if I want specific folders to be available, all of these are going to have permissions inherent from this project root. So they're all going to be set to read write. And I typically would want that. But if I have a demo group or, again, my subcontractors, and I don't want them seeing maybe my specific spec sheets, I can change the permissions on that folder and limit what they have access to. So let's say I wanted to hide this specific folder. I can change this to hidden. And now my demo group will not see my spec folder. The same could be said. I can give only read-only access to that folder. We can give them read-write. Or if we wanted them to actually go ahead and read, write, or delete files out of that, you can set that up as well. So we can get pretty granular with these, and we're not just limited to the attendees group or the demo group. If I had someone specific in mind that I wanted to add, maybe in this case, I add Molly directly into the Studio project, I can manage her permissions directly instead of just a group of permissions, for example. So let me remove this. So kind of walk through some of these permissions. It's really good to know, like if you're someone who's setting up a Studio project and you want to be able to have all that full control and maybe set up a group of admins, I would definitely recommend making an admin group and then giving them full control while maybe restricting some of these permissions for those general attendees. So I'll go ahead and cancel this. So this is kind of the basic overview of a Studio project. Again, it's more of that document management process. You're going to be checking files in, checking them out. You'll be able to go ahead and see any of the revisions there as the files do get checked in and out. And we'll be able to also manage those users as they hop in here. Now, the second component of Studio I mentioned is called a Studio session. So I'll go ahead and close out on my Studio project tab here. And I'm going to open up my Studio sessions. So I'll click on this little whiteboard icon, and it's going to give me access to see all of my Studio sessions. So from here, I want to kind of just walk through. I mean, I have a couple that I could join into right now, but if I wanted to go ahead and make a brand new session, I can do that just by clicking this little plus icon here. So again, I can choose to make a new session. If I have a 9-digit ID, I can choose to join it by inputting that 9-digit ID. But for now, I'm just going to create a new one. So as we start to create this new session, we'll have the capability of putting in a couple, basic details for the session. So I'm going to put in a name. We're going to call this Tuesday Tech Talk Review. I'll be able to go in here and start to add files into my session. So if I wanted to add in specific files, maybe I'll go to my just a quick demo document, for example, grab my markup file. And then from here, I'll have options to kind of set up our permissions ahead of time. So if I want folks to be able to save the files that I've uploaded, print them out, send markups or markup alerts, and add documents, I can kind of control that before the session is even created. I'll be able to go ahead and restrict those attendees. So only people who have my invite can get in. And then also I can set up an expiration. So if this was a specific Studio project, a Studio session, and we wanted this to get reviews and get comments in all before the end of the day, I could set this up to expire by 5 o'clock tonight. So now, next time somebody joins into this, they're going to see that the session has an expiration of 5 p.m. and then the session will finalize after that time frame, kind of kicking those users out after the review is pushed and closed. So once I'm happy with this, I press OK. I've added my files, I've added any users potentially, and now it goes ahead and creates a studio session. Right now it's asking me to invite folks, so I can do that same process as I did earlier. I can add emails from my group, so I have my subcontractors I can send that invite to. I can go ahead and type those emails in. Again, they're going to get separated by domain there. I can even use my address book from Outlook and just kind of sync up with my current contacts, so I don't have to go in and manually type them out. Makes it really, really easy to get that shared out a lot faster. My recommendation here is to always kind of build out a group of typical or common people you might be working on or working with, and set them up in a group so you can always just quickly give them an invite, and you're always going to be working with those same folks, so you can just manage that group and manage who's in that group. From here, I'll just cancel, and now I can go ahead and open up my markups PDF. So I open up my PDF here. I can see any comments on here. And the idea behind a studio session is that I can have multiple people join in at the same time, and we'll be able to see those changes and see folks logged in real-time collaboration and make these comments together. So this isn't really a great example, but I'm going to just go and jump into a different one here in a moment. Before I do want to walk through the permissions of a session just real quick before I get on to the next part. So as we have in studio projects, we also have studio session settings. And again, we're going to see some basic information about the studio session. Again, we can change our session name here. So if we ever needed to modify this, we can. And then also we're going to be able to manage our expiration and those notifications I mentioned. It's similar with the attendees here. We're going to have that restrict option. We're also going to be able to see if people haven't joined or who is joined, and then manage our groups. And then the same here with the permissions: save as, print, markup alert, adding documents, and full control. So these are just the general permissions that you'll have in a studio session. And the reason for this is because we're really only uploading singular PDFs. You can also upload a PDF with multiple pages, but we're not really managing folders and we're not checking them out. We're really just accessing the features that people can have on a live document. So let me join into a different studio session here, and I can leave this current one by just going to this little door icon. I'm going to click on that, and now I can see my list of different sessions. Before I jump into a different studio session, what we might notice is that some of these have different icons and different meanings. So I've set my session to expire, and this icon is kind of indicating to us that the session is going to expire, and if I hover my mouse here, it's going to tell us when that expires. If I see any type of numbers or anything on my session icons here, that means I actually have notifications waiting for me in that studio session. Similarly to projects, we do have a not joined section. So if I were to look into my not joined section for my projects, I'll see anything that I haven't actually confirmed or clicked on when I've gotten an invite. So let's say I'm working with studio sessions constantly and I miss some of those email invites. I no longer have to worry about that because I'm always going to be able to go to my not joined section and just join into whatever I've missed. And so from there, what I'll do is I'm going to jump into our session here. So I'll go into my WIC working session. And from here, I can instantly see a little bit more information. I can see who's online. I can see that not joined section. So if I need to see if somebody didn't join, they need to get in here and make changes before 5 p.m. tonight, I can send a reminder to them. We also can see where that person is in terms of their review. So I can see Colin just joined into the studio session. I have Molly in the studio session. They're both working on my markups PDF right here. I can also, as I'm going through my session, if I want other people to know what I'm doing, I have something called a status. So I'll be able to set my status. Like if I'm going through and I'm maybe done with my review, I can set my status to finished. If I'm going through the review currently, or if I'm waiting on someone else to get back to me, I can set it to reviewing or waiting or something else as needed. These are kind of customizable, so if you needed to go and change or add in your own version of status that you'd like to have in here, you can definitely do that. In this case, I'm going to set mine to reviewing. And now it changes what's going on here in my display name. So I can see that Jared L is now reviewing, and I can click open my markups PDF and just instantly see other folks on the file. So I've opened up my PDF here, and I've got some different markups all kind of scattered about. And what's nice here is, back in the old days, we might take a group of engineers and give them different colored highlighters, lock them in a room, and take away their food until they're, done doing an actual review process. But the beauty of a studio session is that we can do that same process, but all from our own workstation. So I'm able to actually collaborate with Molly and Colin in real time. And as we start to see things happen and we start to see folks actually making comments, they're going to happen in real time. I'm going to see them pop up in my screen, and that's going to happen. So I've noticed that Molly has just added a cloud here in our record. This is updating in real time. So as I click on one of these, it's actually going to take me to what they're marking up. So I'm able to see this happen, and Molly's added some comments here, and maybe she's leading the meeting, so I can go ahead and follow Molly around, and we'll let review do the driving for us. So at this point, we're in maybe a group meeting and leading like a Zoom call, and so Molly's kind of going through and adding some comments to our break room, and we're all kind of on the same page now. So review's driving, I can see where Molly's cursor's at. I can also see exactly what comments she's writing and even make suggestions as we go through as to what we should make comments on. So really, really helpful in streamlining that communication and that collaboration process as you're going through a design review phase, or even just like a job walk or anything like that with any type of coordination. So I'll click to get out of that, and now I can kind of be on my own and kind of navigate this document. Now, what's great here is as we make these comments and changes, it goes a little bit further beyond just watching someone else make a comment or a change. I can select one of these comments that Molly's placed, and we'll instantly notice that these markups are just going to be locked. So this is a markup that I didn't create, and this is done by design. It gives you peace of mind that you can't edit someone else's markup, but you can look at their markup, you can interact with it by actually replying to it or by setting a status. So if Molly asked, do we have a cut sheet for this sync? And I needed to set a status for this comment, or if I wanted to reply to it, I can always right click on this markup here, and I can choose to set a status on this. I can reply to that comment, or I can even alert someone to this comment. So maybe if I have a specific subcontractor in charge of my syncs, I can go ahead and alert that subcontractor or that group of subcontractors to this. When I send out that alert, it's basically going to give them a notification. So in our little session panel here, if I jump from record to notifications, I'm going to see that there's a couple notifications waiting for me to go to. So if I jump to this top one here, it takes me directly to that markup in the view that it was set up as when Molly placed that. I also see that Colin sent me an alert, so I'll click on this call out, and it takes me directly to what he wanted me to go ahead and take a look at. So back to Molly's markup, I can go ahead and reply to this and say, yes, see new package. Cool. So I've added a reply to this. And then if I wanted to track where that reply is, I can open up the bottom side of the interface and look at my markups list. So in the markups list, we're tracking all the data that's associated to our markup. So if there's a specific subject or specific area that the markup falls onto, like in this case, this markup is on our page called floor plan. I can also see the comments here, the author, date, status, layer space, and other things here. So we can kind of get a little bit further into customization. But if I wanted to set a status on this, I've already replied to this. I said, yes, see the new package. I'm going to set the status of this markup to, let's say, accepted, rejected, canceled, completed. If I had other statuses here, maybe this one is set to open, pending, or closed. I can also load up one called implemented or ignored. So before I get my file into the studio session, I'd want to make these statuses and add them in here. But once I'm happy with them, I can go ahead and say, this comment is closed. And when I do, it changes the color of that comment to green. So anytime I look in here and I see that this comment is green, I can check my markups list and we can see when the markup was set to closed, who it was set by, what the date was, and any other details pertinent to that. So as I'm working with a team in real time, I'm able to set these comments and actually do these notifications. So really just a good way of keeping track of everything. Now in our record, this is also going to kind of act as a place for us to not only just view everything that's been done in here in the studio session, we'll also be able to kind of use it as a chat log. So if I wanted to, make a comment without actually placing a markup, for example, what I could do is go ahead and just go to my chat section here and type in, view capture engineers information. And now I press enter, and this shows up as a line item in our record. So one of the really cool things about this is if anybody clicks on that line item now, it takes them to the view that I had when I placed that comment. So I'm really kind of making a suggestion here, or just saying something without actually placing a comment. So if I didn't want to, take up any space or cloud this and say something, I can just do that in my chat. Now, as we get through the document review process and we want to take a look into the record a little bit more, we have the capabilities of doing some of these things like chatting, but we also have the ability to filter and report out any of this information. So these are two icons that I feel a lot of folks miss when they're in a studio session. The filter icon is going to help us if I wanted to just filter all chat icons. So I wanted to only see chat, go turn these all off. And now I'm only looking at my chat. Looks like Colin just found that too. He said there's chat. That's really cool. So we can kind of turn these on or off and just filter to what we want to see. And what's nice here is we're able to, again, do some reporting on this whole record. So if I click the option right next to my filter, we're going to have the report option. So if I open this up, we'll have three options right off the bat. So we'll have a record summary. This is basically going to take all these items, put them into a PDF, and show us a full record of what was being done. I could do a PDF package report, and that's going to, compress any files I have in the studio session into what's called a PDF package. Or I can do a combined files report, which I like this one because it's going to take any PDFs I have, just put them into one document for me, and then wrap that record summary in there for me. So we can change the options of our studio session record here. If I wanted to change the title, add any notes, any additional comments, maybe change some of the PDF options, those will all be here as well. And then once I'm happy, I can just press OK. So this is nice because we've actually had customers come to us and say they've avoided lawsuits because they had a full record of everything that's been done in the session, and they were able to cover themselves and have that peace of mind. So this is what the studio session record is going to look like. As we go through, all of these different items are actually hyperlinked. So if I clicked on one of them, it takes me directly to that. I don't know what's going on with that hyperlink. But as I go through the record, we'll see some of these different items, and it takes me to them. And yeah, again, I don't know why that's not linking properly there, but these things happen. So as we go through the record, we'll see the full list of everything that's been done, and then it's followed up by the floor plan and anything that was commented here. So it's keeping these markups intact. It's making this report. We still have all the access to the data in the markups list here, while also maintaining that full list and seeing everything that we want to in the session. Just getting a drink of water real fast. Now, once a session is completed, let's say it's 5 o'clock tonight, and the session is going to start to close and start to finalize. What this means is when you finish out a session or it finalizes, it's going to kick out everybody else who is already doing their review. So like if this session finalizes, it's going to keep me, the host, involved in the session, and it's going to kick them out. From here, if I wanted to go ahead and finish the session early, I could click on the name of the session and choose to finish that. When I do finish the session, we'll have some similar reporting capabilities. So if I wanted to include all the markups from these different folks, I could do that. Choose where to save these files down. If I am, and I'll kind of like jump into kind of a cool little thing we can do with projects. If I'm working with files directly from a studio project, I can go ahead and choose to save and overwrite the existing files, and that's going to check our files back into that project. But again, I'll kind of circle back to that because there's lacking context. And then again, we'll be able to generate that report, the one I just walked through there, and press OK. So once this session is actually finished, I'll go ahead and press finish. What this is going to do, it takes this session out, completes this, I press OK, and now it actually takes that session off of my list here, and I no longer have access to it. That doesn't mean it's gone forever. We've saved our documents, we got what we needed out of it, but essentially we're closing out that session, and taking it off of this list here. Now, if I ever wanted to get back to that session for any reason, I could always go to a web tab. So one cool thing in Review is you can actually use the web tab feature to log into Studio from a web browser perspective. So in here towards the top, I'll click on my URL bar. I'm going to type in studio.bluebeam.com. I'm going to enter that. It takes us to the sign-in page. Again, I'm going to go ahead and log into my account that I'm logged into now. Press Next, put in my password. And from here, it shows me my sessions and anything about my profile. So the one I just closed is this WIC working session from here. So from here, if I need to click on any of these sessions, I'll get some good information about the session. So I can see what the status is. It's set to deleted because we finished that session out. I can see any documents associated to it, any attendees, restricted users, and then maybe if I'm someone who is going on leave for a little bit, maybe I'm going out of the country for who knows, maybe a week, I can reassign ownership to someone from here as well. So if I know that Molly's going to be needing to take control of the session and reboot it, I can go ahead and assign that to Molly from this portal. Most importantly, though, I'm going to go ahead and set this back to active, and I'm going to update my data. So now when I come into the studio session section, all I have to do now is actually refresh this. So I'll refresh this, and now our session is right back in our sessions panel, and I can click to open that back up and see anybody in here. So it looks like Colin's back in, and then Molly could go back in there as well. So it kind of reopens it, gets it back to life, and restores anything. So if you finished it out too prematurely or anything like that, we can do that. Another thing that we can do is while we're managing our session, if somebody does leave the company, for example, and I wanted to deny them or kick them out of the session because they're no longer working with us, I could go and deny that person access to the session. And when we do this, what's great in Review 20 is we've added the ability to take control of someone else's markups. So I mentioned earlier where we have these, locked markups and I can't edit someone else's markups. But let's say that person left the company and now nobody can actually change those comments. Well, what I could do is reassign or edit them markups myself. So I can reassign them to myself, or I can give that access to someone else, maybe another attendee in the studio session. So if I denied Colin, I would gain control of the session comments that he's created, and I'd be able to actually make those changes and comments myself. So just a couple cool tips and tricks with studio sessions in general. I do want to cover maybe some preferences that I think are really beneficial for Studio. So if you're someone who uses Studio, there's some different things you can do with Studio, as in like changing some of the preferences to make checking files out easier or getting files accessible faster. So one place that I'll go to is I'll kind of switch gears and go back into a Studio project. And if I go to my drawing management here, I can access files and whatnot and open things up, sure. But when I go into the top of the interface and I go to File and I go to Open, it opens up the Windows File Explorer. So if I wanted to actually open up files from my Studio projects, I could set up my preferences to access those files directly from Studio instead of my Windows File Explorer. Like if I set up projects to be my standard workflow and I always want to be working out of project files, I'll go into my preferences. And to do that, I go up to Review, I click on Preferences, or I can use Control-K. And from Preferences, I go to Studio. And in here, there's an option called Open and Save Files to Studio from Toolbar only. And that sounds confusing, but as soon as I turn this option off, next time I go to my file Open, it's actually going to ask me where to get that file from. So if I wanted to get it directly from a Studio project, I've replaced my Windows File Explorer, and now I'm directly in that Studio project and saving 3 clicks at least just getting to the file from File Explorer. If we ever needed to get back to File Explorer, we can always just go to Open from Disk. And one of the nice things here is in this dialog, we can also choose to check files out on Open. So if I'm opening up a file and I don't want it to be locked, I'm going to always attempt to check that file out. And now when I go and try to open up my all combined PDF, it's going to automatically check the file out for me, and I'm going to be the only one making changes to that. So really, really good practice if you want to kind of speed things up a little bit. Another thing that I also think is pretty helpful is if we're doing like a workflow like this and we wanted to be able to access files, save it here directly into the Studio project and folks can get access to it that way. But if I'm in a Studio session or if I wanted to embed it directly into an actual PDF, we have that capability as well. So what I would do is go to Tools. Let's see here. I think it's actually going to be under like a hyperlink option. Yeah, so we might actually be able to add an attachment directly into the drawing. Let me try this on this one right here. But yeah, it's a good question. While I get this set up, is there any others? There we go. Add an attachment. Go find a profile, for example. It could be anything really. So yeah, let's see, tool sets. Grab my electrical tool set. And then I have an attachment built into this. Same could be done here, file attachments. So I could go in, place this, and then add it where I want it to be. So now I've added a tool set directly into this. We can change the size of this. We can change the appearance of this, make it a BTX file, or even kind of like just a file icon of whatever it is. Yep. So I would imagine you could load the profile onto the document before you add it to a session. And then when people jump in, they could click on that attachment built into the PDF and load that profile or that tool set right then and there.
Thank you. I have another question for you. Since we are now in the electronic submittal day and age, if a set has gone through plan check and the city made comments electronically, can you show how we can reply to comments via the markup list menu from the bottom?
Yeah, definitely. So let's say that city came back and they made a couple changes here, made some comments. And this can be done in a studio project or a session, but if they made those comments or changes, again, we'll be able to actually set the status on those or right click on it and choose to reply. So when I reply to it, it opens up a little window for us to type in whatever our comment might be. So error has, been configured. Press enter, and then that gets added as kind of a line item to that. So that's one of the ways you'd just reply to it, or you'd set a status. Ultimately, if you're in that studio session portion doing the design review with them, they would just essentially, you could right click and notify to send them an email of that item. Yeah, so definitely using that reply column and the status column to relay that information back. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfect. And then I'm assuming that from that markup list at the bottom, that when you can print or export that, it's very similar to how you previously showed printing the comment log.
Yes, definitely. So if at any point you need to take a full report of every single comment that's been made here, we can build out a couple reports based off of that. So if you had a need to pull this data into Excel and kind of metricize and work with this data in a different format, you can push it to CSV, XML, or a PDF summary. Now, if we did like a PDF summary, for example, the nice thing here is we were actually able to append and hyperlink that report directly to the PDF we're working on. So if I did that and I wanted to filter out any items here, maybe I don't want to see any file attachments, LRs, snapshots, I can turn those off, turn on any columns or configure that as I need to, and then save this configuration. So next time I do a report, it's going to be the same exact settings and preferences. I press OK, and it goes and reports out that whole list. So now I've made a list of the different comments that were in this PDF. And since I've hyperlinked it and added it directly to the existing document, these get hyperlinked as well. So as I jump to one of these items, it takes me to that specific piece on the report. So yeah, quick and easy to just like create a really fast report, see any information about those items, and then you'll also see stuff like statuses on those items, and you'll also see replies on those items as well.
Thanks, Jared. I will open it up to the audience for any burning questions that you might have.
Yeah, Colin, was there any that you missed by chance or anything like that?
No, maybe just that I think I covered it fairly well when Miriam, your question was about kind of permissions and like the nuances of controlling markups on projects versus sessions. Did I answer that?
You and him both answered it, yeah.
Okay, all right, just making sure. Yeah, I think
Wonderful.
that's well covered. You're getting lots of compliments, Jared. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks everybody. Yeah, we could leave it open a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions or anything else anybody wants to go into. Happy to.
I have a more generalized question. So for those that are attending today, maybe they're interested in having a Bluebeam Lunch and Learn at their company. Would it be okay for me to provide them your contact information, or how would they go about doing something similar?
Yeah, I think if you were interested in seeing a little bit more, you could definitely reach out to Colin or myself. We would be able to kind of jump in and take a look at what options are available, whether like we look at free training options or any type of resources that we have available already, as well as provide if you wanted like a lunch and learn or anything like that, we'd be happy to kind of get that set up and point you in the right direction.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. I recorded this session and I will be sending it out to all of our attendees along with Jared and Colin's contact information. So with that, I'm going to stop recording our session.